Thank you. Can you please call the next witness?
Dr. Brewer.
Thank you, Dr. Brewer, and our apologies for the confusion around the timing. I understand you got a letter on Friday giving you a different time than the phone call you'd received. My apologies for that. The Commission has called you in relation to case 140, Blasia Hoffman, which concerns the death of her brother, Maxim Hoffman, Marie-Louise Island on the 13th of August 1985, a long time ago. The death was explained to the family as a suicide, and the family are questioning this. And in her evidence before the Commission, Ms. Hoffman advised the Commission that you were the pathologist that conducted the autopsy on her brother's body, and her evidence was that you found a large amount of poison in his stomach, about over a litre of poison. And I believe you informed her that it was far too much and it should have been investigated. But there was no investigation. It was determined to be a suicide and nothing was done. So I know it was in 1985, but I'm wondering if you have any recollection or anything you can tell us about the examination of the body of Maxim Hoffman. Thank you.
Do you have any documents that can share light or make me remember, because it's been 35 years?
I know, it's a long time. We requested the documents quite some time ago and we are still waiting to receive them. So we've requested the hospital records, but we still have not received them. I understand it's 35 years ago, so it's very difficult to recall. He was a young man.
Yeah, I started here in 1982. I had been here, just arrived. I was supposed to come and build up the pathology department, especially the hospital pathology, because before, all the specimens that the surgeons were doing their surgery, they had to send it to England for diagnosis. All the pap smears had to be sent to Charing Cross to be read. So when I came, I looked around and saw what had to be done. So initially, we were focusing on hospital pathology. But of course, if a pathologist is in the country, anything that happens, they call the pathology. Somebody dies, somebody hangs himself, whether you're forensic pathology or not, you get caught. And at that time, forensic pathology was in its embryonic stage. They did not actually have a troop. I mean, they had a photographer, but there was no toxicology. So most of the time when we judged that people were poisoned, it was actually due to circumstantial evidence. And it is known that in pathology, when you have one case you haven't seen for years, always expect another one. For instance, if I haven't seen a case of cancer of the liver, for example, for 2 years, I will see 2 cases in 2 weeks, always that way. So I do remember that I had not seen a case of chemical poisoning for a long time. And it was in one period, either 2 or 3 weeks, that I saw 2 or 3 cases of chemical poisoning. And they were all said to be due to Lannett pesticides. And these pesticides, they used to buy them in big containers, and then they separate them in smaller containers, especially soft drink bottles. And most of the time, the poisoning was accidental. Someone would take a mouthful, and then he realized it's not water, and then he stopped. But this case, I cannot sincerely say whether it was, I don't remember his name, whether it was Hoffman or whether it was Taiku or who it was, because I did 3,000 postmortems. Do you know, I can't remember all their names. But I do remember the pathology, that there was some 2 or 3 people very closely timed, which I did the postmortem on, and they had died from chemical poisoning. That is pesticides. If someone accidentally takes a swab or he takes a mouthful, he finds out that it's kerosene, he spits it out, he doesn't drink it. But I remember that one individual, the amount of fluid that was in his stomach was actually a lot. Maybe, I couldn't swear if this was Hoffman or if it was because there were 3 cases. He might have been one of those that I said that maybe it's good for the police to investigate. But this was unnecessary because most of these cases of sudden death are police cases. And we never touch the body until we get authority from a magistrate or from a justice of the peace. They will write the letter, authorize you to do a postmortem because the body was brought in by a policeman or because there was a sudden death. And then the pathologist go ahead, he has the authority to do the postmortem, he does the postmortem, he writes his report, he gives the report to the policeman, because usually there's a policeman who will stay at the mortuary until the postmortem is done, if it's a police case. Even if the body sleeps there, he stays there until the postmortem is done and the report is done and it's gone back to the judge who orders it. And then the judge, reading the report, will order the body to be released to the families. Otherwise than that, the body stays in the postmortem until the investigation or whatever is completed. So when the body is released to the relatives, that means that the legal authorities are satisfied that the death is normal. Anyway, sometimes the investigation continues even after the body is done. But because we did not have the facilities to confirm the type of chemical that had been ingested by this individual, is either sent to Reunion or to South Africa or somewhere because our forensic toxicology was not really developed. So I never heard anything about it again. But these cases, it's easier to remember the cases than to remember the names. For instance, I remember cases that I did years ago where a peanut was stuck in a little 4-year-old throat and he died. That I will never forget. And then it happened again. Peanut was stuck in the throat of another 4 years old and he died twice. I never forget that. These are, so you remember the pathology, but it's very difficult to remember the many names that you see. You don't remember the names that they have, except it's somebody that you know very well. You say, yes, I did a postmortem. So I might have done. It's possible that I've done a postmortem on Mr. Hoffman, but I cannot say definitely if it were Hoffman or someone else. But I know that there was a postmortem that was done that corresponds to a chemical pathology. And in fact, he was registered in the register book as due to pulmonary edema, perhaps what I did, secondary to chemical poisoning. So if you say, yes, I did cases that involve chemical poisoning.
And in any of those chemical poisoning cases, and if you remember the case where there was a lot of liquid, was there any signs of beating on the body? Would you remember that?
No.
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 You don't remember, or there was no sign of beating?
I don't remember. If there was signs of beating, it would definitely be in the autopsy report. It would definitely be in the statement.
And the family told us that in June 2016, they dug up the grave because they were going to place their mother there.
Yes.
And there was absolutely no bones left. It was empty. Is there, to your knowledge, are there chemicals that can just dissolve your bones over time?
Not to my knowledge. The bones, they stay there for years sometimes. Very difficult. At least you will find the teeth there, you will find the jaw there. But for all the bones to disappear, it's very unusual. Or maybe they were looking in the wrong spot.
How could somebody drink? Could somebody drink a liter of poison? I mean, would it?
Except if someone accidentally takes a mouthful of a substance that he does not want to drink, he will not take another mouthful. Because if he does it intentionally, then you can say that he really meant to drink it. You drink a whole glass or 2 glasses because that must be intentional. If someone he fainted or he was hit on the head, he couldn't have drunk anything because he might have been unconscious. But the amount of substance that was in the stomach leads one to believe that it was intentional, according to mine. I've drunk kerosene before and spit it out after the first mouth.
You said there were no facilities here to determine what liquid it would have been.
We didn't have the facilities for forensic toxicology, because if somebody drank or was poisoned by cyanide or something else, we could, for example, a simple thing that you say, I would say that chemical poisoning, you open the body, you prepare for a postmortem, you leave the body open, simple, common sense observation. You come back and you see all the flies in the mortuary are dead because they sat on the body, and they were, they're inside, and they all just die. So you know that it tells you this guy there's a personal subject, there's an insecticide on the body because the flies are telling me that they are just falling off and dying in the mortuary. This is one of the signs that we follow. Simple, but if you want to really confirm it, I don't think they had the possibility to do it here. They had to, most of the time, send the specimens away, or to Mauritius or to South Africa. Sometimes even we had to send the specimens to America. It cost you about 300 pounds to just do a specimen. It's very expensive.
When the autopsy, good morning. when the autopsy was done, can the doctor see signs, determine that the person was forced to drink or the person drank intentionally?
If the person was forced to drink, you will see signs of holding his mouth, excoriation. You will see signs of maybe in his fingernails he's trying to fight. You will see signs of struggle. But at that time, I did not notice any signs of struggling. And the amount, if this is Huffman, the amount of substance that were in the stomach, it was a lot. It was a lot.
So by the amount of liquid in the stomach,
The quantity, you will say maybe he took it himself.
As you know, for the family, they say there was no evidence of depression. You know, they can't comprehend that he would take his own life. He was a very young man. And the only thing, I think he'd gotten into trouble with an audit. 2 crates of beer were missing. But they do not believe that he would take his life for 2 crates of beer.
Well, you will need a psychopathologist to judge them, a psychologist. Sometimes you never know what people are thinking, but I know Sishawa people are very proud people. Very, very proud people. Or one thing I like, very proud people.
I suppose one of the other, suspicions the family had, or why they're suspicious, is because it seems that he was found dead, and even before the post-mortem, they were told it was suicide. He suicided. So they found that difficult to accept without any investigation, a conclusion being drawn like that. That made them suspicious. And no police investigation looking into the circumstances, that I think made them suspicious.
Well, it's very difficult to say because he was not on Mahé. He was on the outer island. Maybe they were carrying out an investigation on the outer island. Nobody knows.
I mean, but the family were never told anything. Just the case is closed. It's a suicide, And they were also suspicious because they were at the mortuary waiting, and they were waiting and waiting to see the body. And then they rang IDC and they said, "No, come here, come to our office."
Okay.
So they went to their office without seeing the body, and then IDC told them it's a suicide. And I think they feel like they were lured away from seeing the body. They were taken away because they believed that the body would have shown marks of him being beaten, and that's what they believe. But you don't recall any marks of beating?
I don't recall any marks of beating. And in fact, the body was supposed to be returned over to the family. Usually, when the judge leaves the mortuary, he writes and says, "You can release the body to the family," and usually the body is released to the family.
I mean, they eventually got the body, but I think they all raced to the mortuary. They wanted to see the body, and nobody was telling them anything, and then they were told, "Go to IDC." So they missed seeing the body at what they believe was a critical time when he'd just been brought there, prior to.
Yes, because if the situation would have been different, if he was beaten or something had happened, we usually do the whole body. You would have seen lesions in his skull. You might have had a skull fracture. You might have had a cerebral hemorrhage. You will see internal bruises, definitely. I wouldn't miss that. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I wouldn't miss that.
When a person is unconscious, can you force liquid down his throat?
No, I don't think so. If the person is unconscious, maybe he will take 1 or 2 swallows, but not that much. Because how will you, peristalsis, if the person is unconscious, he can't swallow. Then the what you call is passive is not active anymore because he doesn't have the power to swallow.
Any further questions from the front bench? No. Thank you very much, Dr. Brewer, for coming today and sharing what you could with us. We really appreciate it. You've given us some insights that, into medical things that we didn't have before. So thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. We have no further questions for you unless you have anything you would like to add.
I better not.
Well, that sounds interesting, right? We might have to call you back. Thank you. I think we will adjourn while we just do the disinfecting. And then, we will be in closed session, actually. So we will adjourn. We're going into closed session. We will not come back to public session until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you.